So let's go back into George's story. He started like a lot of businesses start. I've come across it many times. And what did George see? George said, I'm going to sell this product for $60,000 and I'm going to have costs of $40,000. Now that means I'm going to have $20,000 over. Now, many of us have started our business thoughts where we've laid out these kind of calculations and we've said to ourselves, okay, I'm going to sell for 60. It's going to cost me 40. Therefore, I'm going to make 20. It happens often. So out of that 20, George said to himself, my other costs would be about $12,000 a month. Therefore, I should have $8,000 a month left over. And then he worked out and said, okay, I will draw a salary of $5,000 and I will leave $3,000 in the business. Now, with that $3,000 a month, after a year, George felt he would have built up $36,000. That's not a bad sum of money to build up in a year as savings. So George looked at these numbers and couldn't see what was wrong with it. And he decided to do that business. And within a year, he hadn't drawn his $5,000 a month and he was overdrawn in his bank account. So instead of seeing $36,000 in his bank account, he was now overdrawn by $36,000. Where had that gone? What had gone wrong? Can you guess what had gone wrong with George? Well, I've laid out the scenario before. Many have told me, oh, it's easy. He obviously spent a lot more on his materials than what he thought he was. Or he didn't get the $60,000 a month. Both of those assumptions that people have made are wrong. He did get $60,000 and he did only spend $40,000 a month on materials. So there was $20,000 a month. But something still went wrong. And this is what happens to a lot of businesses when they start out. What I want you to understand is this is what happens to many businesses when they ignore the first rule of financial survival. And yes, obviously, he had to outlay some money in the beginning. This money he outlaid into fixed assets. So items that were going to help him create this business and were going to help him in carrying out this business. They were investments. They were going to be there for a while. He understood that. He had $200,000 in his investment account and he withdrew that. That's fine because yes, he was earning interest on that. And if he was earning 10% interest on that, it meant he was receiving $20,000 a year on that investment. And this business was going to give him $36,000 after everything, after he had paid his salary and after all other expenses were taken care of. He was going to have received $36,000. Therefore, it makes sense. Why would you not do this kind of investment? So what happens with us when this kind of thing develops in our business? We expected a certain amount of profit and it's not there. Suddenly we start thinking, wait, someone's taken the money. Someone hasn't paid me. I must have paid too much. Many times, small businesses go and buy software packages. So they buy a little package. And often we don't understand some of the accounting terminologies. And things like depreciation pop up. Yes, we've heard of it. We understand it more or less. Something about you allocating costs. I've asked people, what's this depreciation animal? And I've been given answers like, oh, it's where the business puts some money aside for a while. Oh, it's the asset actually deteriorates. It's what the business spends every month. But we don't really understand this animal. And in these packages, they say, well, what about depreciation? And people don't really understand what it is, and therefore they start thinking, maybe this has got something to do with what's going wrong in this business. The other urban legend that always comes to the fore is, well, businesses battle in the first 2 years. You know, you've got to let a business run for 2 years before it makes money. Well, that is partly true, but is it always true? Or do some businesses hit the ground running and make money? Now, George felt that. George started questioning, and I know many urban legends also go where people get together in a social environment and some people talk very loosely or brag about their situation or inflate their actual personal situation. And you often hear comments like, you must get my friend. He's a tax consultant. You know, he saved me a fortune in taxes. I'll speak to him and I'll let him look at your business. He'll sort it out in 2 chews. But it's not always about that. It's about survival. It's about the rules of financial survival. And you've got to understand them. So let us now think, what did George do when he found that he never had enough money in his first year? How did he correct the situation? Well, I'll tell you how he corrected it. He went out and he decided that this size business needed more turnover. Now, many times people feel that, and sometimes people also feel they want to be bigger, so they go out and go for growth. And what happened? George put a lot of effort into growth, and that growth came about in the second year. And in the second year, for the last 6 months of the second year, he had won a new contract, which doubled his business in size. Now, anybody who does these calculations and says, okay, I'm going to earn $5,000 a month from my business, and I'm going to invest $3,000 a month in my business as a savings for unforeseen circumstances. When they double their business, instead of now receiving only $20,000 a month with which to pay the overheads or with which to pay the extra costs, they received $40,000. The extra costs were still similar, so they hadn't gone up. So with $40,000, they should have a lot more money available. And this was the case with George. And George felt, well, that's good. In the second 6 months, I am going to draw $10,000 a month as my salary. I'm going to catch up on what I lost in that first year and up until now. And I'm going to draw some extra. And I should have, even though I'm drawing this extra, I should have a further $17,500 available. Now, George had realized in the first year, he thought his extra costs were going to be $12,000 a month. But it turned out that they were about $12,500 a month. So they weren't that badly out. In the second year, he now allowed for $12,500. So the $12,500 and the $10,000 for his salary meant that he was spending $22,500 a month out of that $40,000 that was left over. So from the 40, taking off the 22,500, he should have been left with 17,500. And his bank account should have been a lot healthier. When he got there, the money didn't seem to be there. He hadn't drawn any salary for the whole of the first year and the whole of the second year. And yet the bank account didn't show him the money that he expected, because he was expecting that 40,000 and he was receiving that 40,000. So where had it gone wrong? This is the first rule of financial survival. What happens to that money? Where does it go in the business? If you can understand this first rule of financial survival and you can maintain it in your business should not get into financial difficulty. This rule gets tested anytime there's a change to the way we operate in the business. So join me and we'll take this example. We'll look at this example and go through and understand what happened in the business, what happened to George. And with Siegel's explanations and with learning the logic models, you will understand how it actually fits together and how decisions you're making in your day-to-day are affecting this first rule of financial survival. And that's important. And I feel many times as accountants, we fail to give people this tool, this understanding, this insight to help them survive through growth. Because growth doesn't necessarily mean you're going to survive. Growth can mean you're going to fail. And there are many businesses that have grown substantially and have failed.